Cool. Well, thank you, Burnie, again for coming. And we've got quite a treat.
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit of our podcast set at Rooster Teeth. So I'm tempted to tell embarrassing stories about myself. So
feel free to.
Be prepared for that.
So can you just start by telling us a little bit about your history, kind of your walk to where you are today? I'm sure you probably didn't see yourself in the place that you are. I mean, who could have predicted the world we live in today? So could you just talk about your kind of progression?
You want to go all the way? Let's go all the way back
all the way back to
university. Am I too loud coming on this? Because I can lower my mic if am I a little too loud? Or no? How's that? A little better? Okay, great. So I went to school at the University of Texas at Austin, which you guys might be familiar with, right up the road. And I was there in the mid-90s. And that was at the point in time when the internet really came out of nowhere. I mean, the internet's existed in one form or another for about 20, 30 years. But that was the point at which it really caught hold and it became a real commercial and residential product that people could access, like with email and AOL and Prodigy and things like that, and then the World Wide Web. And that was really cool. I was a pre-med student at UT. Yeah, my whole path, my entire life had been to go and be a doctor. Mainly, I think really I chose that because it was like when you pick the top job, doctor was the top job. So I just was going to do that. And so then when I got to the point where I saw the internet and I immediately got it, I understood what it was. And I said, well, I want to be involved with this. So I switched from biology pre-med to computer science. And I had to sit down with my parents my senior year at UT and say, I'm switching majors to computer science. And yeah, they didn't laugh like that. There was a lot of silence in the room. And so it made that tough decision, but what ended up happening is, as I'm sure you guys can imagine, I graduated undergrad with about 160 hours total on my transcript. And so I ended up with stuff like organic chemistry as an elective, because I had to put it somewhere. And what that ended up creating for me was an environment where I had to take just computer science classes in order to graduate with my degree. And they were all prerequisites for one another. It was very linear. So I could take maybe 1 or 2 classes a semester in my last 2 years there. So 2 things happened. I got a job in telecom. I was working with a CLEC, which was a local company. It's actually right off of I-35 here, just south here. It's called Telenetwork. Started working there. We provided local dial tone to different rural communities around Texas. And then I also had an interest in filmmaking. So I went and audited a couple classes. And then I thought, well, this is 2 years after Robert Rodriguez made El Mariachi. He made a movie for $7,000, set the world on fire, and started to launch this huge career, part of this big independent film movement. I always had an interest in filmmaking. I thought, well, I can either sit in classes and take RTF classes to do that, or maybe I just take that money and make a movie. And by the time I finish making a movie, I should know everything I need to know about making movies. And so I wandered down to our television station there, a student-run television station called TSTV. It's now called KVR9. And there was like 4 people working there at the time. And I just basically started asking around saying, does anybody want to make a movie with somebody that doesn't know how to make a movie? And my business partner to this day, Matt Hullum, said, I'll do that. And so we spent a year making a 16 millimeter feature film. We shot it on film. This is about 1999. And we thought, okay, after a year, 13 months of shooting this movie and editing it, we thought, that's it. We have a movie, we're done. That's the whole thing. But then we learned at that point in time that that's really only your ticket to get in. Like, that is how you get into the system. You have a project, you have a completed film. Then there's this whole other stage afterwards, which was getting people to see your movie. And for independent film festivals, that was the only way to go back then. And the process of getting a film into an independent film festival is basically you submit your film, and a committee of about 7 people watch it, if you're lucky. And those 7 people determine if they're going to put it in a room where 200 people can watch it. Then that's the whole process. And so we went through that for a whole other year. We got some really nice, rejection letters from some of the most prestigious film festivals all over the world. And at that same time, Matt went out to California to start a job in visual effects. He worked on terrible stuff. I always say that Matt worked on every movie that opened at #1 with the lowest possible amount of money. He worked on like Scooby-Doo, and there was like a Sylvester Stallone race car movie in there called Driven. It's all just, it's garbage. And I was back in Austin, and I was working at Telenetwork, and I had some friends who were really, really funny guys, but they didn't know anything about production. And so I took the equipment that we had from the schedule, that was the name of our movie, and I said, let's start making stuff and we'll just put it online, because we were doing web stuff, like little blogs. They weren't called blogs by then, they were called everything nothing sites, like little news sites. And we made, to date this, we made a parody of the Apple Switch ads, where the people switched to Mac for various reasons. We made a parody of one where the guy switched from PC to Mac for all the games, and then he realizes there's no games on Mac. And because we had a very gaming audience. And we put that up, and this is a story that you would hear, it's commonplace today, but what happened was I put it up after work, like around 8 p.m. The next day, Matt called me from California, and he said, hey, I just walked into my buddy's office. It's that guy at work that you always gotta have to like check on what he's doing, because he's always like watching something online. And so he walked in, and there's Gus, our friend, on his screen. He goes, how do you know him? And the guy said, I don't know him, this is just a video that everybody's sending around today. And so Matt called me and he said, did you write that? I said, yeah, we produced that, we put it online yesterday. It's like less than 24 hours, it got all the way across the country. And so that was a moment for us where it was like, why are we doing this any other way? I mean, we watched all those walls just fall down around us, and we can go directly to an audience. And so we started putting videos online. We built a whole brand around it called Rooster Teeth. We launched our first show April 1st, 2003. That's about 3 years before YouTube even existed. Wow. And we started hosting our own videos. And I mean, long story short, it was like one of those really fun American dream, like overnight success stories where 3,000 people watched the first episode of Red vs. Blue when we put it online. It got linked on big social media sites of the day, which were Slashdot, Fark, and MySpace. Anyone in this room, anybody old enough to have had a MySpace account? Anybody? Wow, really?
Hey, look at that.
You have terrible parents, really. Really, 8 with a MySpace account? You're rocking your Justin Timberlake. But yeah, so we got linked on like all those things. It went huge on MySpace. And I remember, back then there was no YouTube. There was no upload button, right? There was no infrastructure for hosting video online. In fact, it was so ahead of the curve of showing video online, there was no way to watch video in a browser. You had to watch it in a separate player outside of the web browsing experience. You had to download it and then download a player and then play it as a file. And you know, in 2003, without that infrastructure, that meant if we had a huge hit, we had to pay for people to download these files. You know, there was no pre-roll ads or anything like that. So 3,000 people showed up to watch the first video. 250,000 people showed up to watch the second video. By the end of the month, we had 1 million viewers a month. And we got a bill for $12,000. And this is something we were doing for fun at night. Yeah. And so that is like the ultimate like business, quote unquote, problem that you want to have. Yeah. But we had to figure it out, you know, very quickly. How are we going to pay for this? Here's an audience that wants to watch it. How are we going to make this happen? So we had to come up with a lot of our business models before anyone else was really in that territory.
So what was your first business model? Was it selling DVDs?
Yeah, the first one was to help us find somebody who could host the damn thing. Yeah. That was, you know, to cut expenses. But actually the first thing that we came up with was, we get a lot of credit at Rooster Teeth of having very progressive business models, but actually they're based a lot in traditional media and things that we saw were successful. Like we do things like premium subscriptions. That's the first thing that we did. And the way we made our premium subscriptions work, we said, look, there's nothing for us to sell. We don't have a DVD. We're making the show and putting it up every week as we make it. But at the end of this season of the show, we're going to have enough episodes to make a DVD, and we're planning to sell a DVD. If you want to sponsor it right now, then we came up with our sponsorship program. It'll cost $20, and at the end of it, we'll send you a DVD. Or if you don't want the DVD, it'll just be $10. And we recognized something right away. We were big internet guys ourselves. And we know that's a two-way street. We know there's a lot of communication. A lot of people in media don't get that. They still think it's a one-way conversation where they put up media and you watch it. And that's the way it works. And here's also what you should buy after watching our show. But we always knew it was a two-way conversation. And as, you know, young people starting out, you know, we were very, very into, you know, what the audience thought about it. We were reading all their comments and everything. And one of the first things we noticed was, you know, we would spend all week working on an episode after work. We would write it, we would record the dialogue. We would animate to it because Red vs. Blue is it's a cartoon show. It's based on the video game Halo. And so that would take us all week. We would work about 80 hours a week, on the weekends and everything, producing an episode. We would put it out. We would finally finish uploading. We'd see people were downloading it, and then you'd see there's the comments are blank, and here comes the first comment. The first comment loads. You're like, what are they going to think? Did they like the episode? Are they happy with it? What do they think? And then the comment loads, and it's just first. And that is probably, of the 15 years that I've been making content online, first post is probably the most consistent thing. And at first it was annoying. But then we looked at it, we looked, here's an example of the audience telling you exactly what they want. Yeah. Is that in a place where you have access to everything, this is a world where you can just, if you decide you want to see something, probably within about 2 minutes you could be watching that thing. In 3 minutes you'll be bored of it and on to the next thing. But in that world where everything is accessible, what becomes important is quality and how quickly you can get it, who can get it first. And so our premium subscription model that we came up with was part of what we call the economy of first, where those people get everything before everyone else. And we've held on to that model since day one. That was the first thing we used to monetize. Wow. Yeah, and that was a fun couple days too, because I was still working the day job at that point in time. And so on my lunch break, I had permission to work on stuff. And so we turned on the payment system, and then at the first half of our lunch break, then ran out to get something to eat. And it was a PayPal system that would connect. We'd take donations through PayPal. And there's, in AIM, Instant Messenger, there is a cash register sound. And so we turned on the sponsorship program about week 6, and I said, all right, every time I get one of these emails from PayPal, I'm gonna have it play the little cash register sound, and then we'll see, and that'll be fun. And then we said, okay, so we turned it on. We said, okay, let's go to lunch, come back, and we'll see what happened. So we go to lunch, grabbing a sandwich, and we're there, and while I'm there, my phone rings. And I pick it up, and it's one of the guys who works at the company, is George. And he goes, hey, how do you turn off your laptop? And I said, why, what's wrong? He goes, because your screen is locked, but it won't stop making this noise. And he held the phone up to it, and it was that cash register sound, like starting over and starting over. It was like cha-ching, wow. Cha-ching, 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 like that. And it was like, and I hung up the phone, and my buddy goes, what's wrong? I go, we gotta go back to the office. And it was just like, it was an amazing moment where people were just, we felt ready to support something in that way.
And so you touched on a lot of things, but one of the main things that you touched on was community, the power of, you already had the community to go to ask or to sell to. You know who your community was already, you built that up. But you kind of built that up before social media really took off. Mm-hmm. So how did you kind of grow your fan base or engage with your audience before social media? Was there a way, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people
considered themselves as part of it. Did they?
No, I just think like back then it was internet forums were the big thing, and that was the communication. And really, I mean, even today when you look at Snapchat and Twitter and everything and WhatsApp, if you look at all those things which have enormously high valuations, like WhatsApp sold for $19 billion. It's amazing to me because I was, in my telecom job, I worked in the .com industry when everything came up, like Mark Cuban started broadcast.com and sold it to Yahoo, and all those major things happened where Google was started and Amazon was started. Messaging is the weirdest thing, just the baseline communication of person-to-person messaging. There's been so many different versions of that, of being the standard over time. If you go back to AIM, ICQ, ICQ sold to AOL, if I recall correctly, for $190 million. And I remember thinking in the late 90s, okay, well that's done. We've already covered the instant messaging part of this world, and now we're locked out. ICQ will be the standard. Yeah. Anybody have an ICQ account? There we go, okay. Finally, I finally dated you guys, or myself. But since then we've had Twitter come along, we've had now Snapchat, we've got, I don't know how you feel, Dr. Royal, but the thing that scared me the most of are we in a .com environment again is this Meerkat thing that just happened, where Meerkat at South by became this darling child and raised $11 million of VC or something. It was all anybody could talk about was Meerkat. As if we haven't had live streaming before, right? Exactly. There's been 1,000 ways to do live streaming. Somebody found a way to monetize chat roulette, basically. That's the way it comes down to. But then Twitter launched Periscope 7 days later, and it gone, just gone.
Yeah.
which is like, you know, it's a kind of a funny story, but if you're one of the people who invested $1 million and then it's just gone, essentially, that's kind of a rough deal.
It also sounds like you kind of did some crowdfunding before crowdfunding was a thing. I guess selling DVDs, but you said you sold them for $10 even if they didn't get a DVD. Was that?
Yeah. So our model looked a little bit like Kickstarter does today, or crowdfunding.
Supporting you, but.
And there's different levels to do it.
Yeah.
And you know, and then there's a digital level that's cheaper, and then there's a you know, a physical level with a physical DVD that's a little bit more expensive. And then we got into, from there, we got into merchandise. Yeah. T-shirts essentially at that point in time were like the currency of the internet. I mean, that's how anything made money. And I hate the word monetize.
Yeah.
That word I've heard that word so much over the years. It's such a dumb word. It's like, I've never heard of an industry where people had to make up a word that means to make money. I mean, that's like, that's what every business is. Yeah. You know, I don't think they sit at Ford and they say, well, here's the design for the new car. And like, how are we going to monetize this car? It's like, you don't monetize cars, you just sell it. And that's the way a business works.
Sell themselves a lot of times.
And so and that's all it was. I mean, we always looked at our business like it was a business. Yeah. You know, that we had expenses and we had to cover those expenses, and that was up to us. And as long as we broke even, we were fine because we all had day jobs. Yeah. But then if we did things right, and I think we did, we got to the point where, you know, a year in, people started to quit their jobs. I was probably the last guy to quit my job. I had a really good job at Telenetwork. But I quit probably 2.5 years into the mission, just because it was like, at that point, I couldn't ignore it. I mean, I was spending most of my time on it.
Full-time job.
Yeah.
So that kind of segues into your recent crowdfunding project with your full-length feature film, Lazer Team, which just recently is coming out this year, right?
Yes, so we're in post-production right now, should be out in August.
So can you talk about that crowdfunding campaign? I know you had set out to get, what, 650,000 was it? Or something like that, and then you ended up getting like 2.5 million. Is that right? Well,
there were two big decisions with the crowdfunding thing, which was what to set the goal at, and then which platform to use. And those two problems kind of came together because, you know, we reached out to Kickstarter because they were the biggest brand, you know, in crowdfunding, and everybody knows about Kickstarter. So we reached out to them, but we didn't get much of a response. And then we started talking to Indiegogo. Will Wheaton had just run a very successful campaign for Tabletop. And another one of my friends online is a guy named Freddie W. And he had funded 3 seasons of Video Game High School, a show that he makes across multiple different platforms, but 2 of the seasons he did on Indiegogo. And we talked to the Indiegogo guys and we said, hey, we're gonna do this crowdfunding campaign. We're gonna do it for $1 million. And they said, maybe not 1 million. That's pretty, you know, ambitious. And we said, well, we have a fairly good idea that we can reach $1 million. And we also, because we're making a film, a feature-length movie, I should say, not a film, because we're making something feature-length, we do want to communicate to people that we understand how much money that takes to do something like that. Because the big problem that we identified with crowdfunding is that a lot of things get funded, but not as many things actually get made, just because there's failures. And that's bad for everybody on the crowdfunding level if stuff just doesn't get made. So Indiegogo said to us, they said, okay, well that makes sense, but think about it like this. A big part of crowdfunding, big benefit is it's marketing because it makes people aware of your project. And if you guys hit $1 million and that's your goal, that's one press event. But if you set your goal lower, you get a press event when you hit your goal, and then you get a press event when you hit $1 million. And we said, oh, that makes sense to us. Yeah. So we set our goal at 650. We didn't realize those 2 press events were going to be about 5 hours apart, though.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So we turned the campaign on, and we hit our goal in 12 hours, and within 24 hours we had broken $1 million. Wow. And then at the end of the 30-day campaign, we raised $2.5 million, and it became the #1 most funded project on Indiegogo ever, and it's the 3rd highest crowdfunded movie of all time, behind Veronica Mars and the Zach Braff movie.
Wow. Yeah. So what do you attribute the viral nature of that to? I mean, was it purely social media, or just your strong community was already there?
It's really, I mean, if we just look at it as a component of our community, a big thing that happens when you study online media is the people that talk about online media, there's like this just endless stream of enormous numbers that really almost don't make sense in a way. To give you an example, the numbers for Rooster Teeth on that are, we were late to YouTube. When we first saw YouTube, I identified it as a competitor. I remember somebody showed me YouTube in 2006. I took a look at it for about 5 seconds and I said, no one's ever going to use this. It's garbage. Look how bad the quality of the videos are. And
Dancing Baby?
Yeah, it's all like flash compression and everything, and I just like, no one's going to do this. And then, you know, after a while, we realized we had to be part of YouTube just to be in the conversation.
Yeah.
And so, even though we started in 2008, within 3 years, we grew to the point where Rooster Teeth, the main channel, was the 4th most watched channel across all of YouTube globally. We have about 18 million subscribers across all our channels. We're closing in on 5 billion video views. And, you know, we just generate, you know, a significant portion of our revenue just from YouTube. So those numbers are the numbers you always hear a lot, like 5 billion views, 18 million subs, things like that. And you're just like, especially for people who are getting started, it doesn't make any sense. Like, how do you get to 18 million subs? But when you look at our crowdfunding campaign, when we broke the record, which was $2.2 million, when we crossed over that and we broke the record on Indiegogo, we only had, at that point in time, about 24,000 backers. That's it. And 24,000 anything is not a number that you will hear a lot in online metrics. You know, they will talk about like 24, you know, if somebody has 24,000 tweets, that's about, you make fun of them, that's about it. But sorry, if anyone has 24,000 tweets. I can only make fun of that because I have 23,000 myself. But but 24,000 is not a number like that you'll ever hear. People always want to talk about the millions and the billions and all that stuff. But that, I think, is a number that someone can wrap their mind around, right. You know? I mean, we broke the record for the revenue, you know, $2.2 million with 24,000 people. Wow. And so I think that is like an achievable goal. And if not 24,000, how about 10,000? And then you've raised $1 million, right. You know? And so that's the best part about it, is that if I look at, you know, what drove the success of the crowdfunding campaign, I also look at like, what does that leave on the table for the rest of the audience? 18 million subs just on YouTube, that's just our YouTube audience. Mm-hmm. If, as a percentage of that, 35,000 people, that's the number of people that ended up backing at the end of the campaign when we were all said and done at 2.5 million, we had 35,000. 35,000 out of 18 million is less than 0.2% of our audience participated in the crowdfunding campaign to break the record. So we have 99.8% of our audience that has yet to engage with this project in any way whatsoever. So that just means big things for when it comes out. Yeah, to me. So I would say yes, the community and the audience is definitely what drove that for us. But that'll then, that 0.2% of our audience is what's driving our next generation of content, which will help us discover whole new audiences. Just out of curiosity, is there anybody here who watches Rooster Teeth or is watching on a regular basis? So one thing we always run into, thank you by the way for watching, the rest of you, shame on you. The one thing that we always run into, a common thing I should say that we run into for people who talk to us about Rooster Teeth, is one thing I always ask is, how did you first hear about it? And I never hear the same answer twice because we have about 3,200 videos in our YouTube catalog. So it's always a different way that people find out about it. But a big thing I hear is that, especially for like parents or older siblings, is they don't watch a lot of online media, and so they're always trying to find a way to introduce their parents or their friends or their family. They're trying to find ways for them to introduce them to the content, and we think the movie will be a great way to do that. Wow. If you hand someone a 10-disc box set for Red versus Blue, that's a little daunting. Yeah. You know, if you give someone a movie on a DVD, they can invest some time in that and help discover the rest of the content. And if they like it, then we have the whole catalog that they can look at. And
now we've seen, obviously, you know, web video, you've got DVDs, you've got now a full-length movie. Mm-hmm. And so you're jumping from screen to screen here. Do you have like that strategy that you're kind of looking to the next mobile screen to figure out the way that people are going to digest your content? Are you thinking of?
We try to be what we call format agnostic, where I said this during the Lazer Team crowdfunding campaign. This was June of last year. People said, the main question was, is this going to be a movie that's in theaters? Mm-hmm. And I said at that time, we have to make this thing. And a movie takes between 12 and 18 months to make. I said, I can't sitting here right now tell you how things are going to be distributed in 12 to 18 months. I don't know. No. So I can't make that prediction. And anyone who says they can is probably just wrong. Things happen fast. There might not be movie theaters in 18 months. They might not exist. The home experience might have just completely taken over. At that point in time, Google Glass was being talked about a lot. Who knows? Maybe VR was going to take over, AR was going to take over, and people would be watching on Google Glass. That did not happen, thank God. But so it's impossible to predict that. So we just try to make the best possible content, and then when it's ready for distribution, we try to apply the best method of distribution that exists at that point in time for that content. And I don't think you can do it any other way. Yeah. The last thing you want to do is like plan a piece of content for a specific method of distribution and just hope it like either catches up or something. Like I know people that are making a lot of 360 video right now for VR. Yeah. That's a big bet. Yeah. That's a real big bet.
Yeah. Any plans for VR stuff?
Oh yeah, we've also done some live events. We started a fan event a few years ago. This was one of our first early indications of how crazy the community is we were going to start our own convention, but we wanted to start very small, something we could manage. So we decided the first year event will just be a fan event. It'll be 200 tickets, like tour of the office, all that stuff. Very personalized experience. So we put up the tickets, and the audience broke the ticketing system in the first 30 seconds. And in 30 seconds, we sold about 600 tickets to our 200 ticket event. Because
cash register sound?
No, that time it was just a lot of people crying because we had to redo all of our plans. And that's our convention, RTX. And we went from 600 people the first year. Last year, it was the entire Austin Convention Center. It was 33,000 people. And this year, it'll be 50,000 people at RTX. So.
Growing.
Yeah, so it's not, and so I was going to say, so for 360, not everyone can attend live events. So we recently, with our Let's Play group, Achievement Hunter, they had a live Let's Play event, and they tend to have a younger audience, so it's harder for those people to travel and afford live event tickets. And so we recorded some of that in 360 because we thought that was the best way to approach live. You can watch the guys on stage and then turn around and you can view the audience as well.
So it's, in your discussion of monetizing, the reason you probably hate it so much is that it's so hard to predict, where that revenue is coming from, because we're living in the world where you're having your fingers in many pies instead of.
Yeah, I think the reason I hated the word monetization to begin with, where I learned to hate it, was because we were doing this for like 6 years. 6 years into the mission for us was 2009, and people were asking us as late as, they were asking us as late as last month. They were like, do you think anyone will ever make money doing this stuff? It's like, we have 40 employees in 2009. I said, do you think they're just showing up for fun? Yes, I definitely think that. So I kind of knee-jerk reaction too, because for a long time, web video was like, it was cute. It was like a hobby. I have friends that work in, I have friends that work in Hollywood, and I was lucky enough to do a panel with, I think it was her that said it. I think it was Lisa Kudrow. I did a panel with her. She was on Friends. And it was right after they announced House of Cards. And House of Cards had a $100 million budget. It was $4 million an episode. And I was like, $4 million an episode. And I was like thinking from online video, I was like, that's incredible. $4 million bucks. This is going to be a game changer. And I said, can you believe it's $4 million? She goes, I know. And I said, that's nuts. She goes, it is nuts. How can you make a show for $4 million? And I was like, what? And then I realized when she was on Friends, they all made $1 million bucks an episode. It cost $6 million bucks to get people to show up for work. 6 of them to show up for work. Yeah, so it's like, so for a long time, web stuff was just kind of cute. But we're just reaching this point. There's a massive convergence going on right now. And we talk about our strategy for distribution. I always had the opinion of, I watched the cycles of it go through. When the internet started, everything went digital that was communications related. Things like instant messaging, email. Then the thing that followed that was print, because print was the smallest sizes of files that you could move online. And so we watched the print industry get hit and change dramatically. Then the next thing that happened was audio, because that was basically the next file size up. We watched what happened with Napster in the music industry and how things just went nuts there. And I always knew that this is going to continue. And the next thing that's going to be is video. And it's going to take a lot more bandwidth. It's going to take a lot more technology to happen, but I know that it's going to happen. And what we talk about, when you talk about all these different screens, you're not going to think about the difference between a computer and a television screen. It's just screens.
It's a screen.
Yeah, it's going to be on a spectrum, right? Yeah. And so I always had faith that that was going to happen. I definitely thought it was going to happen sooner. So we always made sure that if we had opportunities on TV, that we approached them that if it's a good opportunity, but that's moving backwards, that eventually everyone's going to be heading this direction. And that eventuality in the last 18 months has gone from being an eventuality to being imminent. Now it's like everyone suddenly is moving online. HBO, Netflix, CBS, everyone is launching a video platform. And so we wanted to be ready for that.
So you were recently bought out by Fullscreen?
That was a big part of that strategy, yeah.
So that gives you a platform by which to compete with HBO and Netflix and Amazon. Is that... be in that world.
And it's not just that. I was just at a conference in France, which was a big international television conference, symposium, where it was buyers from all over the world, like looking at new television shows. And digital was a huge focus for them this year. And when we talk about all these different shows, like we talk about like Game of Thrones, we talk about Walking Dead, we're competing against that because that's a lot of people watch it online now. Those are the things we're competing against now. It's not just PewDiePie. We're competing with like attention spans, across all different forms of media, and it doesn't mean just online video. It doesn't mean that. I mean, when someone goes to watch one of my videos online, they can click to watch that, but they're also making a choice when they click to watch it to not click on Facebook, social media, to talk to their friends. They're not going to click on Twitter. They're not clicking on a video game. You're competing with all different kinds of media across all different industries, not just the entertainment industry.
Wow. We're going to take questions here in a minute. I don't know if yeah, let's watch the trailer.
Oh, yeah, you guys want to see this? So this is our movie that we crowdfunded last year. It's called Lazer Team. We always wanted to get back to feature filmmaking, and we like idiots in extraordinary situations. So this is our take on idiots who have to save the world, essentially.
In 1977, a signal was received. It is the only recorded incident of alien contact. The source of the transmission has never been revealed. Until now.
Is that it? No, it's another spaceship that fell out of the sky, dumbass. Daddy likes.
What else they got in there?
There's a trigger in here, but it doesn't do anything. Where's my phone? I gotta make a vine!
Conflict is coming, but we need your help.
I think they gave me amnesia.
Anesthesia. Shut up, dude. Y'all stupid. I'm out of here.
You expect me to train these idiots?
Get the hell out of here, man. I know what I'm doing. Let's crank this baby up to 100.
Next.
The repulsor defensive gauntlet produces an energy shield.
Yeah, I just have a quick question before we begin. How exactly...
Your new uniforms. They are not anti-flammable.
They are flammable.
They will not retard flames.
Are you expecting us to catch on fire?
Oh! I should go.
This alien is gonna be here in 2 days. If we're not there to fight it, who's gonna be? Are you with me?
Hell no!
What are you doing?
I'm having a beer. I just ran for 3 miles.
Yeah, like a quarter mile at a time.
We're actually working together.
If anything comes at you, I will block it. Why the hell are we Lazer Team anyway?
Because I have a laser.
Yeah, but the rest of us don't.
Right, you're the team part.
Nobody cares about your stupid name.
The helmet heightens all mental functions and other visual enhancements.
Guys.
What the hell is your problem?
Oh, get up! Oh, God! I wish I was dead!
I like that. I'm actually after this, I'm going out the Broken Lizard guys for Super Troopers. They just started a campaign. We're technically not the third most funded movie of all time anymore. Technically now we're fourth because Super Troopers has done so well. But fuck them, their campaign hasn't closed yet, so they don't count yet. But they're actually doing a telethon. We spoke to them and talked to him about strategies for crowdfunding. We got a lot of great advice from Freddie Wong, Freddie W., who had done a ton of stuff with Rocket Jump. And so we kind of paid that forward. We talked to the Broken Lizard guys. We told them about some of the strategies that we used. And one of the things we did was a 12-hour live stream, kind of like a telethon.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're doing that right now. And we're going to be on that a little bit later today. We're doing like a guest appearance at like 10 o'clock Central Time.
Wow. So tweet it out.
There you go.
See that.
Yeah.
So I guess from inception of the film idea, I mean, was that something that you had come up with or your team came up with, and then let's write it and then let's produce it?
That is inspired by Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So the based on a true story, which is a slate that appears halfway through it, that there is actually a real event where we got a one-time signal from space. The SETI program. Yeah. In the 70s. They got a one-time signal. They're supposed to monitor the cosmos for alien civilizations' radio signals. And we got a one-time signal that looked exactly like they thought contact from an alien civilization would look like. Mm-hmm. But they have never been able to decode it. This is a real event. It's called the WOW signal. And as a further kind of cluster, I love when really smart people make really dumb mistakes. No one recorded where the satellites were pointed, where the dishes were pointed, so they don't even know where it came from. And we pick up our story from there and say, we actually do know where it came from. We actually were able to decode it, and they were supposed to deliver this suit of power for one person to wear, this alien race we contacted, but obviously things went wrong and it ended up in the hands of 4 idiots instead of one really cool dude.
Wow. So you co-wrote it and co-produced it.
Yep.
Can you talk about that whole process of like?
Yeah, well, we shot it over the course of about 40 days, and there's a lot of different steps to it. We had to do some casting. We always look at the way other people make content. And while we recognize that Rooster Teeth has a big audience online, we know we're not household names. And really, honestly, no one online is. I mean, I was just cast in a movie called The Outfield, and the lead actor in that is a kid named Cameron Dallas. Does anybody know who Cameron Dallas is? Anybody here? Really? Wow. I would think that you guys are just like a little bit older than his audience. So Cameron Dallas is, he's been the lead in 2 movies now. He's in a movie called Expelled, which was, when it came out, it was #1 on iTunes and movies across all movies. It was #1 for like 3 weeks. Huge audience, mostly teenage girls. He has 8 million Instagram followers and 9 million Vine followers. And it's like, this is the thing. It's like you stay in a room and it's like people don't know who he is, but he has a huge audience. We know we're even that like on a scale even more specific with gamers. So we wanted to have a strategy where we had some household names in there and we had some Rooster Teeth people as well. The flip side of that is College Humor did a movie. They put none of their people in a College Humor movie, which as a College Humor fan, I was disappointed by.
Yeah.
It had cool people, like it had Glenn Howerton in it from Always Sunny, but I wanted to see Streeter, and I want to see Jake and Amir,
Yeah.
So we mixed it up a little bit.
Well, good. We're going to go to questions. If you guys have them, we have people in the audience that have mics.
You guys brought your own mics. Wow, that's convenient.
I'm sorry, I just have to fanboy out for a second. Back in high school, like the first season of Red vs. Blue, amazing.
Thank you.
I'd say life-changing. But anyways.
I would agree with you.
Just, what is it like for whenever y'all are sitting around coming up with content? Because y'all have so much, like you said, like 3,200, and all your videos are just like, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of y'all in them because it's just a lot of fun watching them. I was just wondering, what is the process of coming up with content like for y'all?
Well, I appreciate that, and the y'all have changed over time. It used to be just 4 people and got to be 6 people, and now it's I think last head count was 85 people that work at the company, and they project by the end of the year we're going to be at 120 because we have a couple of different productions starting up this year. A lot of them are animators though too. But when people come in the door, we don't make them spend a lot of time, working the system before they can pitch stuff. People can pitch stuff right away. And we don't take everything, but people know when they come to Rooster Teeth, they have an opportunity to create a show and put it on the air. Example of that is our show Ruby, which was, we had an animator for Red vs. Blue, a guy named Monty Ohm, tremendously talented guy. And he was our animator for 3 years, and Red vs. Blue, am I dying out? Am I low on batteries, or am I just temperamental? I'll hold still like this for the rest of the Q&A. So we said, look, Monty, we can, Red vs. Blue will run forever. It's at 13 seasons right now. We don't know how long it's going to run. You can animate it forever, but is there something else that you would rather do? And he came up with the show Ruby, and that's been an enormous hit. You know, one of the things about Red vs. Blue is even though it was world popular, it mainly did well in English-speaking countries because we find that comedy doesn't always translate to other languages and cultures. So our focus with Ruby was to focus more on action, and Monty was a world-class fight choreographer, and you know that worked like right from the get-go. It was #2 on Crunchyroll, which is the biggest portal for anime in the U.S., and it was picked up by Warner Brothers of Japan for distribution. It's the first anime that's going to go from the West to Japan, imported. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Thank you.
Another question? Lots of them.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nick Raven. I'm a grad student. You use video game technology for all of your animation. What brought you to that point versus using traditional animation techniques?
Well, I mean, first of all, we don't do just video games for animation. You know, Red vs. Blue is a show that started out, you know, being animated strictly using a video game, where we would essentially use Halo as like a digital puppeteering environment, and we would act that out. And it was mainly because that's what we could do. I mean, we had 4 people. It was me and three of my friends who were completely untalented. And we had to find a way to produce something that we could produce. And that's just the way we did. In fact, up until someone called me and told me the name of the art form, I thought we had made this thing up entirely. You know, and somebody called me and said, no, what you're doing is called machinima. I was like, and so then we got to the art movement actually transformed into what, you know, is now the Let's Play movement, where people will just watch other people playing video games all day. This is the first time I've ever been accused of being quiet. I got you, okay.
More questions? We've got lots of them.
Apparently we can only take questions from the left side.
Hi, how many, for your video skills that you learned, I say like video editing, how much did you learn in college at UT as opposed to like on your own?
Everything is fundamentals, you know, and the fundamentals of production apply no matter what you're doing. I mean, a lot of what's happened in the online media revolution has had way more to do with distribution, I think. But like the top quality productions, you know, it's still, I mean, I didn't learn traditional filmmaking, editing with like cutting reels of film. I knew people that did that kind of thing, but I worked on like tape to tape, A/B roll, and everything I've done since then has become way more efficient. But those strong fundamentals of how to edit, how to light, I mean, those things don't change over time. And at the end of the day, I mean, what it basically boils down to is writing. Things like camera phones and direct uploading to YouTube, that has spurred other kinds of content, but they're not the kind of content I make, like vlogging or, you know, just, you know, daily video content. It's not the kind of thing I do, like documentary and stuff. I think it's been way more of an impact on that than what I do. That's great.
Better? All right, better. Hey, where are you from? Yeah, we got you.
What advice do you have for someone who wants to start making films but doesn't really have any experience in it? Like, what advice do you have for someone who kind of wants to get into that?
I'm going to paraphrase a quote by Robert Rodriguez that I read, which is, you have about 40 bad movies in you, and the sooner you get those out, the better it'll be for everybody. And it's true. It's like you just kind of have to start the process, and it's you know, as young people too, time is on your side. Any time that you spend making content or honing a craft is time well spent. I mean, even if you get done at the end of 3 months and what you did isn't great, you'll still be learning those fundamentals that we talked about, you know, and you'll be building on exactly what you want to do next, and like, you know, crafting your stories as you go without even realizing that you're doing it. And I mean your long-term stories of what you're going to be doing in your career. But it's tough. You know, even if you make something that's great, the environment online is a lot different than it is when I started, and I acknowledge that. YouTube publishes a stat which is frightening, and the latest stat is every minute on YouTube, 300 hours of footage are uploaded. That means if you wanted to watch every single video that's on YouTube, you would fall 2 weeks behind every minute you tried to do that. That is an incredible noise floor. And I think one of the biggest challenges for people starting today is discoverability. How do you get discovered among all that other content? That's just YouTube. That's people uploading. Then you have stuff like House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, everything that's being produced by major studios now coming online. It's a tough environment to compete in. But you have the same access that they do, so.
Yeah, yeah. One of the first things you did was you just went out and filmed the video, and I'm sure you failed a lot and succeeded a lot. You know, it's like the fail fast mentality of like what didn't work and what did work.
We threatened to get sued a lot, a couple times too, so.
Cool.
Never mess with the NFL Players Association. That's my recommendation to all of you. Don't never do that. It's tough. If you can show, especially people these days, if you can show it'll have some impact on their social media profile and have a plan for that, that's a language that I think everybody speaks, for better or for worse. That's a good way to do it. You know, a lot of times, how I do it internally in my company is concept art is a big thing for me, is that I sit people down and say, here's a project, here's what we're gonna do, and I think that gets people excited about it when they can see concept art. And that's a thing that if you can find a good artist to collaborate with you, that's something that you can produce that looks like very high production value work, but isn't necessarily that expensive. Like if I can commission, you know, 5 pieces of concept art for about $500 or $300, depending on the artist, I can show people something that they're used to seeing from like Star Wars. Like this is, you know, the sketches of what we're gonna do, and they're like, oh yeah, and they can kind of like start to make, you know, those pathways in their head for where they think the project is going. But it's tough. I had another actor friend in LA, and they said that people asking you to be in their web series is like the new jury duty. So yeah, people are getting jaded kind of fast. So it's an uphill battle, but if you can show people that'll have an impact on them, like with some kind of social media profile, that's probably the best way, I would say, to get people excited about things.
My name is Christopher Herman. I spoke earlier. I just wanted to ask. All right, there we go. Anyway, my name is Christopher Herman. I just wanted to ask, where do you see Rooster Teeth in the next 5 years? You know, you've produced all this new content, you know, the No, Achievement Hunter, you have your podcast, and now you have a feature-length film. Do you see yourself making, you know, new movies in the future, or you know, new original content?
I do. I think a lot of our productions that we're looking forward to, kind of our cornerstone projects, will look a lot more like Lazer Team than they will like other shows. A big thing that I'm becoming aware of now that we have a 13-season show under our belt, Red vs. Blue, that's the longest running web series on the web. It is the second longest running sci-fi show in the history of the world, like behind Doctor Who. It's like 2 decades behind Doctor Who, but it's still number 2. So, but that's daunting for someone to get involved with that. And I don't think we're gonna find new viewers for that show anymore. I think the people who watch that show are the people that watch that show. So my approach to productions going forward is I actually am a big fan of the BBC model. Shows like Sherlock and the original Office, where you write really high quality, compelling stories, you shoot 3 to 4 great episodes a year, you run it for 2 or 3 seasons, and that's it. Because I just think about, you know, I came from the space, started making content because I wanted to see this content being made. I think that's been a huge part of us building our audience, is that we make this stuff because we like it. And so I think that gives us a genuine voice, which our audience, especially gamers, really identify with. So when I look at content that I want to make over the next few years, I want to make stuff that can be discovered the way I discover content, which is, you know, you kind of hear about a show, You hear about enough times and finally like, okay, I will watch this. You know what I mean? That's the way I was with Breaking Bad. That's the way I was with Game of Thrones. You know, it's like I didn't pick those shows up until the 2nd or 3rd season, but I spent a whole weekend after I watched the pilot, and I just binge watch everything. I think binge watching is a huge part of our culture. So we're going to be making shows that cater to that. And it's going to take a while to build up that catalog, but we have other productions in the meantime. All right, thanks.
So you started off as friends making videos for fun, and now it's more of a business. Have there been any?
Yeah, I hate those guys now.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask. Has there been any hardships along like y'all's relationships because of that? Because it's more of a business, or?
This is about to turn into a therapy session. No, yeah, I mean, there's definitely is always kind of hardships. I mean, but those kind of come and go. But it's like we were also. I mean, it's kind of like a band is the way we look at it. That's the original model we had, but now that we have like 3 or 4 generations at the company, we now look at our model more like a Saturday Night Live, where, you know, you might have, you know, started watching Saturday Night Live because you really liked Will Ferrell, but then after a few years, you just kind of got into watching Saturday Night Live, and then, you know, Will Ferrell went off and did other stuff, and there's other people to replace them. And there'll be really great people that you don't know where they came from, and you couldn't plan for it, but here they are, and you know they're doing it. So, yeah, there's always definitely been hardships along the way. You know, I had to step down as CEO about 3.5 years ago, just because I came to the realization that I was a guy that got us from 0 people to 50 people, and the person that gets you from 0 people to 50 people is probably not the person that takes you from 50 people to 500. It's a totally different mindset. Like, I would just look at the way we would spend money, and I would spend too much time like acting like we were still back in a bedroom in Buda, you know. Best example of that is we have, even after I stepped down as CEO, our current CEO, Matt, my business partner, who took over for me, him and Yvonne, are basically our VP of operations. She does all of our bookkeeping and everything else, and like all of our budgets. We were holding RTX, and somebody, I just heard a conversation that somebody, like one of the tech guys, said, I got to order 3 iPads for this kiosk, information kiosk we had at RTX. So I went over to the administrative offices, walked into the middle of their meeting, and I said, hey, I just heard that we're buying 3 iPads for this kiosk. I go, can we buy 2 iPads? Do we need 3 for this thing? I was like, I interrupted their meeting for this. And Matt looks up at me and goes, we're buying 3 iPads. There's 30,000 people coming to this thing. How about you get the hell out? I go, all right, I'll get out. So I just left. So it's like you have to be honest with yourself about that too. And I also, like, you know, with friends working together, I know brothers that work together. I went to school with the Duplass brothers and the Zellner brothers who just made Kimiko. I don't know how you work with your brother. I mean, I've you know, I would punch my brother, you know, as stress relief if I worked with him. But, you know, you work with old friends, you just kind of learn to put up with each other after a while. A little bit.
Is this thing on? Yes. My name is Andres Rodriguez. I'm an advertising major. And now more than ever, with all the channels of distribution that are available right now, Twitch, YouTube, Vimeo, and whatnot, at what point, besides self-promotion, would you go about knowing what channels to reach out through, and as well as knowing at what point, when you start producing content, would it be reasonable to, you know, have crowdfunding without it seeming just like you're just asking for, you know, just free money to try and produce?
And a crowdfunding that's like funded by your friends and family, right? I mean, that's actually not a bad place to start. I mean, there's a lot of people that will support something if you just ask it, ask for them to help you out in that way. Yeah, but it can be kind of tough with all those. When you talk about like the constant introduction of new forms of distribution. I mean, I deal with that all the time. I think we all do. It's like, you know, it's same like discovering content. You can think about the ways that you discovered like a social media platform where you hear about like Snapchat or Periscope. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but now I'm at a stage in my life where it's like when I hear about Periscope, I will literally say, do I have to pay attention to this? Is this something that I need to look at? And it takes me a while to like, okay, this is finally reaching a point where I know it's not going to die and it's not going to be a wasted effort. So I'll get on board with it. And, you know, I'm really proud of how ahead of the curve the company has been for certain things, especially with online video. But there's a lot of stuff that we were slow to do. You know, a lot of time we were taking very measured steps. We don't just kind of have our head on a swivel looking for whatever the next platform is going to be. We don't do that because we'll spend a lot of time wasting effort and resources going all in on something, and then it disappears, or the audience moves on to something else. You know, if we started a social media site ourselves back in 2005, if we had decided to just use social media at that point in time, we would have spent all of our efforts raising our friend count on MySpace as high as we could. And then when everybody moved away to Facebook, we would have started all over again. And now that people are migrating away from Facebook, which, by the way, is something you probably see coming, that Facebook is leaving. Everyone older than you thinks Facebook is an unstoppable pillar of the internet. It will never go anywhere. They just can't imagine the internet without Facebook. But I'm sure you guys definitely can. I mean, it's just a factor of time. I mean, all the 12-year-olds are not going to want to be on the platform with all you gross 20-year-olds. I mean, sorry.
Friends to see.
Yeah, and we see that anecdotally. Like when we had our Let's Play Live event, everyone was taking selfies with us on Snapchat. Like 90% of the audience, that's the way that they did their photo ops, is with Snapchat, which seems weird to me because then it's gone in 24 hours. Yeah, so you know, but the memories last a lifetime. So,
were you very calculated when you were deciding on Red versus Blue on Netflix? Is that why you waited?
Netflix is really Netflix is a metrics black hole. You know, when television started, movies had box office receipts. They knew how many people went and saw it because they knew how many people bought a ticket. TV, they just started broadcasting it. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars just trying to figure out how to measure television audiences. That was a huge thing. They don't know who's watching it. They had no clue. Whereas the internet, from day one, is swimming in metrics. In fact, I think to our detriment, because you could put an ad for, say, like a Porsche in a magazine like Newsweek. I'm not a media buyer. That's like the worst placement ever, is Porsche and Newsweek. But you could do that, and you would have no idea, other than Newsweek telling you our subscription rates are X. We distribute to 18 million homes for Newsweek. So 18 million people could have seen this ad. That's it. No other idea of how many people saw it, how many people like didn't just throw away that issue of Newsweek. They have no clue. Whereas on the internet, man, you can see who watched the video. Did they click through because of the ad? Did they, when they click through and because of the ad, did they actually buy the thing? And so you're held to all this, like, all these metrics that no other industry is held to in any way. So I've always felt we've had a problem of metrics. Netflix has the great solution to that, which is they're not going to tell you. That Netflix will not tell the producers of their show how many people watch it. The person who produces Orange is the New Black doesn't know how many people watch that show because Netflix does not have to share that information, so they choose not to. They don't tell you anything. So when we went to go put Red versus Blue on Netflix, we had 12 seasons done at that time, and we put seasons 1 through 5 up because Netflix was offering a certain rate. And we said, we think it'll do better. They said, well, if it does, we'll let you know. Like, sure you will. So we put seasons 1 through 5 up. It shot way up on trending. You know, and that's a whole algorithm that works based on what you watch anyway. And then immediately they called us back and they wanted seasons 6 through 10. So that's the way that Netflix reports on metrics, is they just order more from you. And we had a good indication of how well that worked. And that was a year ago, maybe 18 months ago at this point. And I had people all over Twitter telling me, hey, Red versus Blue is on Netflix now. Now I can watch it. And I'm like, that show has been available in every format. Yeah, I mean, everywhere where you can get it. But it's like, that's the way that those people watch. Yeah. Binge watch content. They only do it on Netflix. And I get it. I get it. We're at a point now you can't tell the audience how to watch your content. You just got to make it available in whatever format that most people are consuming content at that point in time.
Did you see a rise in YouTube subscriptions after that?
Nothing that we could like correlate. Yeah. No. You know, it's always things that like, we have those moments, those opportunities that come up that you plan for, and you can't ever predict how well something's going to do. As a good example is we went on TRL. It was very relevant at the time. Thank you very much. We went on TRL on MTV, and that was like 2006, I think. We did that, and it was the post Carson Daly. We spent probably 2 weeks planning for that. We were going to get more servers so that we could host the videos, because we were going to get so much traffic from appearing on TRL. We went on TRL. They did 2 segments with us. We were on, went to a break, came back. They did more about us, a pre-produced piece that we shot down in Buda, and then they showed like part of an episode. You would think that we did nothing that day. We didn't see a blip for any impact that had on our website in any way. But a couple years later, I put out a video of a show called Immersion. We got linked on a auto blog called Jalopnik. Just like, hey, these guys made this funny video game car, but they made it in real life. That was enormous. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people came through to that video because of a link on Jalopnik. So you can never predict what the impact's going to be.
Yeah, and you could have probably never predicted your career going the way that it did, just because of, you couldn't predict.
Well, you have hopes, you know what I mean. But I think that Red versus Blue kind of smashed all those hopes in like the first 2 or 3 weeks. So
we were just talking about that, like in career-wise, when you're looking for that job, that opportunity. I mean, you never know what that might lead to. So take it. I guess when would you decide when to take something like that or not?
It's absolutely true. And I think the thing I fell into the trap when I was leaving college was I would read a lot of books about like success stories. And I think the big thing you need to take away from, like, I read Robert Rodriguez's biography, I read, about Steven Spielberg and the way they did things, people that I aspired to have similar careers. And I think the idea that I had at the time was to follow in the footsteps of those people, like recreating the circumstances of their early career. But in everyone's career, there's always going to be an X factor that you could do everything the exact same. You're never going to get that random opportunity that really took things to the next level. And for Rooster Teeth, it was probably timing of when we started doing it. You can do that if you're far enough ahead of the curve and you can see the window coming. But the big thing for us was we somehow convinced Microsoft to let us use their multi-billion-dollar video game franchise to make a video series. Yeah, talk about that. Okay, so we would watch, back then we would watch, they weren't video views, they were hits on the web page. So we would watch IPs come in as they hit the web server, and we could see how they were coming in based on domains, meaning like Dell.com. So if like one person at Dell watched it, and they would send it out to all their other friends at Dell at work on the email, internal email, then all of a sudden we'd see one Dell.com address, then we'd see 10, and then 30. So you could actually watch things, how they worked virally, and how those audiences would expand. And then we got one hit from Microsoft.com. And then in the next 5 minutes, we got about 1,000 from Microsoft. And Gus like brought it to me and showed it to me. And sure enough, the next day the phone rang. And it was Microsoft. And to their credit, we had a long conversation about it. And they said, Microsoft is a company that says we value innovation. And this is something that we don't understand at all, but it seems innovative and people seem to like it. So let's just see where it goes over the next couple of weeks. And the next couple of weeks turned into the next couple of months, turned into the next couple of years, and now we're a fully licensed partner of Microsoft, and we got a 13-year web series to show for it.
Wow.
But the whole thing of like, recreate the steps of Rooster Teeth, if you want to make Nintendo would shut you down. Everyone could write how that story should have ended, and it just didn't. And that's the X factor, I think, for us. And I would tell you exactly how we did it if I knew how the hell we did it. I don't. I was in the room and I still don't have any clue how we were able to pull that off.
Got a question right here.
Yeah, hi. My name is Christian Longoria, and I was wondering, is there a story behind how the name Rooster Teeth came about? And if so, could you share it?
Yeah, it's dumb. When you're making a brand, you don't really think of it as being like a 13-year brand, right? So it was it's a symptom of what I think what makes Rooster Teeth great is that we always pay attention to our community. And so the first video we put out for Red versus Blue had an insult where one of the guys called another guy a cockbite. I would apologize for swearing, but I think that ship has sailed for us already today. And the audience like latched onto that. And it just became like a catchphrase that they used all the time. And so we made Rooster Teeth as kind of a joke off of that, as like an early nod to the early audience. But then it just became this brand that like got traction, and we had it for a long time. And we're just in a place now where it is a silly brand, but yeah, brands are weird themselves. You don't really think about it anymore. Like when you hear the brand Amazon, you don't associate it with any of the other things you normally associate with the word Amazon. You just don't. It just becomes what it is after a while.
Google
or Netflix. That's a really dumb name, but it's like what it is. Or Bare Naked Ladies. Yeah, that's another reason we're like a band, because we have a silly name like a band like Hoobastank or something like that.
Papa Roach.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Erin. There seems like there's so much social media, it can get overwhelming.
Yeah.
If you could take away any social media platform without getting all the backfire, what would you take away?
Good Lord, that's a great question. Gosh, there's just so many that I'd like to get rid of. I don't know. The problem is too is like there's always somebody who enjoys something. I mean, they really enjoy it. And I hate to like the idea like to disparage something that people like, because there's so many voices on the internet now that tell you not to like something. You know, that's like it's the best part about the internet is you can connect with like small groups of people that like the same thing that you do. But there's always people that tell you not to do it. Let me chew on that for a little bit, and I might have to come back to that because I can't. Nothing like jumps to mind of something that's just like asinine, but I know there's something. I probably would get rid of emojis. That might be top of the list.
Woof. The Office. Woof.
Let's get rid of like half the emojis. Some of those you don't need. I just saw one the other day which really made me nervous. It was like, you know, the universal symbol for no, you know, just like the Ghostbusters, like the red circle with the slash through it. It was that, but it was inside it was the number 18. And I was like, what is that supposed to communicate? What does that mean? Is like I'm not 18? Is like why would it, I don't want to get that in a text from anybody. I really don't understand. If somebody can explain what that means to me, I would love to know what it means. But yeah, what the hell? We'll just nuke emojis. How about that?
We got one here.
Hi, my name's Paul Clark. My Rooster Teeth story, my first time seeing Red vs. Blue was when I went over to my cousin's to spend the weekend. He's like, dude, you have to check this out. It's a great video. Red vs. Blue. So.
You know, that right there is a big part of it. In the early days, the sharing of Rooster Teeth was like more literal sharing of people like saying, here, watch this. Not like sending it out, or if they did send it out, they sent it via email, and they would rehost it. So a lot of times we don't even know how many people watched the first episode of Red vs. Blue. We've tried to estimate, we just can't. We just can't, because there wasn't a view counter back then.
And my question is, given the state of science literacy here in this country and around the world, and the nerd culture and science fiction culture's audience size, what would you say to science educators on how to adopt kind of your model that you've done to reach such a wide audience and have such a massive fan base?
Never watched the podcast, have you? We talk about science all the time. We had to have a science expert come on and correct us for like 2 years of science, just like bullshit. That
was going to be part 2.
Okay. You know, I think we're actually in a really great place with science now. You know, because I mean, I know NASA's having ongoing funding issues, but I mean, if you look at everything that's going on with innovation, with energy, with private space travel as well, I think it's great. It's like, you know, the problem is that as technology becomes more ubiquitous, you know, and we have more advanced technology all the time, it becomes a major part of our life without people really understanding how it works, you know? I mean, people don't really understand how televisions worked when they grew up watching television. Likewise, everyone has a mobile phone in their hands at all points in time, and I don't think they know like what it takes to make that happen, because technology builds on itself. So to get people excited about it, you know, there's programs like Red vs. Blue. I mean, the fact that Red vs. Blue is the longest running sci-fi show in American history, I mean, I think it says a lot. The audiences for sci-fi tend to be a lot smaller. The typical story for sci-fi shows up until this point, even going all the way back to the original Star Trek, ran for a couple years, had a ravenous fan base, and it was canceled unceremoniously, you know? Firefly's a good example. That show ran, what, 12 episodes? Even? Yeah, and it was over 10 years ago, and people still talk about that show constantly. So, what's that? Yeah, Twin Peaks, another example. You know, it's all the same audiences too. I mean, I even look at Ruby, and it's not really a sci-fi show, but I know it's that same audience. It's like, it's hard to quantify. I actually look at it a little bit differently. We talk about like gamers, and we talk about sci-fi and like geek culture and all things like that. I think that we're not going to see it. Steve Jobs said it's much easier to connect the dots going backwards. You can see these things like after it's all done, you can go back to, oh yeah, this is how that progressed. But when it's taking place, it's harder to see those things building. And I think right now we're in the process of building a completely distinct and unique culture that is an online culture that people identify with, where people are online people or they aren't. And the people who are online, they have their own language, they have their own jokes, they have their own culture. And I think we're in the process of building that. That's where it came from? Okay. It's like Wikipedia on the fly right there. I love it.
More questions? I know we got them.
My dad worked at the Super Collider in Dallas, so, and that's now a mushroom farm, I think. Yeah, so just goes to show. I think we're coming back from a really like a dip in science in America, especially.
I'll stand up. Hey. My name is Adam Rollins, and my Rooster Teeth story is that one day I watched the first 5 or 6 seasons on YouTube. Then I reached the ending where there was all the multiple endings, so I thought it was over forever, and I was very sad. And it wasn't until a couple years later that I discovered that it hadn't actually. Anyway, the point is, my question is, do you have any plans for the absorption of your competition and eventually Hollywood?
Oh, you mean, well, I think what's going to happen is, I do think that everything is going to be distributed across all platforms at all point in time. Like day one, what they call day and date releases across theater, digital, home video, everything. I think there'll be a convergence there. Some things like broadcast television, I think, will still stay windowed for long periods of time. And then I think even we could see a rise of a new platform, which is just freemium content, where it's available for free after like so many years, like Guardians of the Galaxy could go to like YouTube, for instance, after like 5 or 6 years, and it's just supported by ad revenue, just because they call the tail of these things. It's sold enough DVDs, it's done enough, and it's like, eventually just work its way there. But it won't ever. The days of things moving to the public domain they're just gone now. Ever since Mickey Mouse came into existence, public domain just really doesn't exist anymore. But I think we'll see a new rise of that, of freemium content as well, or a freemium layer that people window into.
You have another one?
But I always thought we were talking earlier about being format agnostic, and he mentioned something where I always challenge people too at the company to think of different ways. Because we're distributing online, we can do lots of different things. We can play with technology, we can play with themes and narratives in ways you can't do in other formats. And one thing that's always bugged me about web content is that even the content producers approached it like it was essentially TV light. And they applied the same standards to themselves that they applied to television. You didn't have those standards. I mean, you can make content online of any format. You can think outside of a traditional narrative. You can make something really, really, really dark that wouldn't be on television. I guess television's getting pretty dark with Walking Dead and stuff, but to really get traction, you can think outside the box. What we did with Red versus Blue, season 5, when it ended, we ended a huge storyline in season 5, and without telling the audience, we just produced 5 different endings to the show, to that storyline, and just put them all online in different ways. And depending on how you clicked on the link, you would go to one different version. And we didn't advertise that in any way. And so when people went to the forums to discuss the ending of the Blood Gulch Chronicles, they were like, yeah, and I can't believe they all killed each other at the end. That was like crazy. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, and it was so much fun for us to watch them discover that, because it was like, it wasn't a gimmick or anything. It was like, we can just do this. We can deliver to every individual viewer a random ending to this episode.
And on top of that, different demographics too. You have a kids game.
Like Game Kids.
Game Kids.
Yeah, Game Kids are more family oriented channels. So because kids and family entertainment is an ever growing part of the audience. In fact, one of the most popular channels online is I think it's called Disney Collector. You guys are familiar with what this is? Online media is so bizarre. Talk about different formats. This is a woman, she opens Disney toys. That's what she does.
Unboxing of just random.
I think she's got about 40 billion views at this point. She has videos that are like 250 million views on a single episode. That's like 5 finales of Seinfeld, basically. Yeah. It's crazy, and that's just what she does. She just opens Disney products and talks about them.
There's a niche for everything.
There really is.
We got some more over here. Oh yeah, right here with the Rooster Teeth shirt.
Yeah, part of kind of going off Game Kids and stuff like that. When I was first introduced to Rooster Teeth, it was just one channel, and now with like the addition of like Funhouse and like stuff like that, and Funhouse. Are you planning on, or anything that you can talk about, any more channels or anything like that to kind of widen the brand, or like where Funhouse is based in LA, like
right.
Rooster Teeth is Austin? Are we gonna see an East Coast office anytime soon, or anything like that, or?
Well, I think it all depends on how big the gaming stuff gets. I think we'll move more into live streaming. A guy that just left the company, Ray, was getting us started on that. and he was helping us build the live streaming thing, and then I guess he did so well he just went off and did it on his own. But so we'll do more live streaming. I think that like every different channel has a plan for where it's going. Rooster Teeth's going to be making more high quality content like Lazer Team, things that can play on Netflix against Game of Thrones and Walking Dead. The No, I think we'll get more into more informational content that's outside of gaming and tech. We look at our audience, our very young audience that watches Rooster Teeth, and we know they don't watch a lot of other things, so we definitely feel compelled to have informational content, whether it's science or whether it's things like Ferguson. We almost packed our no crew up and sent them up to Ferguson when everything was going on there, just because if they see our people reporting on it, these are people that they'll feel it's genuine, that they should pay attention to it. Our audience will get awareness of it. And I draw comparisons to that, like with what MTV did with like Rock the Vote. I mean, they really pushed things and they got young people voting, and that's an important thing to do. Achievement Hunter, the gameplay movement just continues to grow and grow, and then Funhouse is a huge part of that as well.
We got time for one more question, if we have one.
Nope, no pressure.
The last question.
How scary is it, like, letting your kids, like, in a YouTube video or something like that? Because I know I've seen, like, Jeff lets his kid in the Let's Play, and you obviously do live streams with your kid and stuff like that. I mean, how scary is it putting your kid out there for the internet?
Well, we have a very nice audience, but it doesn't take many people. You can have just one person who doesn't understand boundaries before it really gets pretty scary pretty quickly. We actually had to say on our podcast the other day that if you hear sometime in the future that we called the cops on somebody who just showed up at our office, that's not something we're hoping to do, or something that, like, if you hear about that, it's not a suddenly like getting out of touch with people that show up. It's like we've had incidents at the office, we never talk about them, that it's like an ever escalating thing of like people showing up at the studio or following people to lunch or that kind of thing, to where now that almost seems like more and more of a reality. And a lot of times we've been fortunate so far that a lot of times it's just kind of misguided ambition more than anything else, but it definitely clues us into how public all of our lives are at this point in time.
I just got one more question for you.
Yeah.
For anyone going to a digital career today in the media with the changing platforms and fast-paced environment that they're jumping into, what kind of classes should they be taking, and what kind of skills should they walk out of their undergrad degree with?
Well, if I told you all the languages that I learned to code in as a computer science major, you would feel bad for me, because not many of them are used commonplace anymore, and that's just the way technology works. However, the skills that I learned in doing all of that have followed me through, and like learning a language, you can apply that to other languages as well. And computer languages are just the same as like, Latin languages. Yeah. I was just in France. I speak French, but then we went to Italy just for the hell of it, and my girlfriend speaks Spanish, so between my French and her Spanish, we kind of spoke Italian together. So that same kind of a thing applies. If you just apply yourself, and the coursework is set up so that you can learn something, and quite frankly, learning how to learn something is the best part of education. And if you spend the rest of your life, feeding that passion of learning, that dies in so many people so quickly that they kind of escape from school. But if you can really get a passion for learning and always growing mentally, it's hugely important, especially in technology. I mean, everything that I've talked about here today is commonplace to you all, but that's really more so than anything else, that's a factor of your age. I'm 40. There's not many people my age who understand anything about what I do. It takes me 20 minutes at a dinner party to explain what I do for a living. And it's just people, it's not like it's hard. You guys know that. It's not hard. It's just they don't pay attention anymore. And the world moves really, really quickly when you're not paying attention.
Good. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it so much.